you do something you're good at. Don't do something you love.
That's what it was. That was the business. The business was a pen and paper
right now, because It's like they're going to go somewhere else and work for the guy that does have work. And
like, oh, you. Yeah, I've seen the truck a bunch of times. Hey, by the way, do you?
We're going to write down everything that everybody does. We're going to take.
Remember, you used to write everything down anyway. You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you haven't already, there's these buttons. Some of them say like, some of them say comment, some of them say share, some of them say subscribe. If you see one of those, please touch it. Go ahead and do that for us. Like, subscribe, comment, share, follow us, all that type of stuff. If you want to take the conversation beyond with just what you're listening to here, join the go to Facebook, type in Roofing Success, and join the Roofing Success Facebook group. Today we're talking to Chris Diroll, Michigan, Detroit, in the house today.
Yes,
I haven't had any contractors on here from not too many from, I don't know if I've had anyone on from Michigan and definitely not someone from Detroit. So it's been a long time coming.
Well, that's exciting. I'm really, it's one of those things, like I listened to plenty of your episodes, a lot of other episodes. And it's like, I think, like I said to you before, it's like, I kind of feel like the freshman coming on to the basketball team the first year, where it's like, you're just trying to do what everybody else is. And so it's like you guys reaching out, it's like, man, it's cool to be somebody else that sees things of like, hey, you guys are doing something that other people should look at too. So yeah, man,
that's awesome. You caught Nikki's eye, and Nikki does all the booking for all of our shows. And she finds, companies that are really, they're doing something in their market. And so, Tresnak Roofing is the company. Give us your story. How'd you get into roofing and involved with Tresnak?
Yeah. So, this is it's a family business that my father-in-law, Tom, and mother-in-law, Suzie, started back in '84. So Tom went to school, construction management at Western Michigan, started putting on shingles in the summer for this guy out in Kalamazoo. And it was one of those things where it's kind of, I would say, this is the essence of the podcast. And pretty much anybody that runs a business themselves thinks the same thing as, I can do what this idiot's doing 10 times better. And Tom was out shingling roofs. And it's like, you know what? I can just do everything this guy's doing. He started basically coming home after he got his degree, went back to Royal Oak, where we're out of. So we're in the burbs of Detroit, about 15 minutes from downtown. So basically started knocking on doors like, hey, I did my mom's roof. And so we're in a little neighborhood, but Detroit, it's kind of how it's built up. A lot of small towns that are all connected and adjacent, but everything's its own little city in a way. So he really started the business, became the Royal Oak Roofer. And that was the thing that basically he built this business up 30 years, and he got it to doing $1 million as a solo operator, owner operator, salesman, basically doing everything by himself. And so this is where, so he's my father-in-law. I had been dating his oldest daughter, Allie, for, I don't know, probably 5-6 years at this point. We had met out of, we had worked, this is basically my life before I came into being a roofer. I was an engineer, and I got out of college. I went to University of Dayton, go Flyers. And so after college, I went and got hired into a manufacturing company. Basically, it's, hey, we're going to bring you on for a training program. Basically teach you to be a manager of a business, manager of people, that sort of stuff. So did rotations. They're like, we're going to send you out to these plants where we got them. You're just going to go somewhere, and we're going to keep moving around once a year. So I met my wife the very first, 2 weeks after I get sent down to the middle of South Carolina, middle of nowhere. We meet. I'm in the operations and sales stuff, and then she's in finance and accounting. And so we started dating, basically ended up kind of going on a journey. We both were in that program, moved apart, dated separately, and then kind of moved back together into Cleveland, lived there for a few years. So I had a background basically going through not only I started in the manufacturing plant as a design engineer, building products, learning processes, learning how does a business make stuff. like at the end of the day, every business, we're all doing the same stuff where we take this, turn it into that. And it's like, it's kind of just a longer story of that no matter what you're doing. So when I started there, basically started at the plant, got a role doing that. Then I went to our headquarters, did some marketing, some other stuff, then got into sales. Long story short, sales, it was one of those things where corporate America, this is the thing that really was like, all right, I'm not cut out for this, because at the end of the day, if you're an employee of a bigger business, especially, there's lots of good things. There's safety. There's a huge safety net. But you're not the person that they care about the most. At the end of the day, they truly care about the shareholders first. If they're a publicly traded company, it's like, you got to think of the shareholders. So they change our commission structures. We want you to sell more, but we're not really going to pay you for that difference. And so it's like the movie Office Space, when Peter goes in to talk to the Bobs, he says something. He's like, it's not that I'm lazy. I just don't care. And it's kind of that mindset of like, I could feel it inside me that it's like, they're not incentivizing me to achieve anything above average. It's like, those businesses are great. If you're an average person, it's like, you're going to fit in, you're going to do a good job. It's going to be a fair shake for you at the end of the day. But for somebody like me, it's like, I'm looking to make improvements, do things. And it's like, well, we can't do this because of ABC. Well, we can't do this because of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, this is so annoying. It's like, I can't work anymore to make any more money. So I'm kind of becoming that guy in the office, like the older salesman. He's the tenured sales guy who's been there for 30 some years. He's like, you're becoming the emperor has no clothes guy. He's like, the emperor has no clothes. Like the emperor's out, he's naked. It's the magic suit. And you're the only person like calling him out. And it's like, this was in some team meetings and stuff, district meetings, where I'm just like, asking the questions like, does anybody else see this? Like, is it just me? This seems like crap. And so it was one of those where I'm like, you know what? I can't keep doing this, because this is going to make me you're getting into too much of a negative mentality. So that Thanksgiving back home, I came to visit my girlfriend, Allie, at the time. We're seeing her folks up in Detroit, talking to her dad. And it's like, how's stuff going? He's having a good year. Things are busy. It's like made it through the recession. And so it's something like getting the business through the recession and then back up to a point where he's selling $1 million a year. It's like, he's crushing it, but crushing himself at the same time. And it's like, he had the business that it's amazing how much he could scale it with the tools and the technology that he used, which was essentially pen and paper. And so it's something where it's like, all right, I need a salesperson. Like, that was kind of something that he was talking about. And I asked him, like, what's your long-term plan for the business? Because I was just getting pissed with corporate America. So I'm like, all right, this is going to be probably a better fit than what we were doing at the time. So he's like, I just got to make enough money so I can retire someday. And so I'm like, all right, this seems like a perfect opportunity for both of us. It's like, we can have something to transition, buy the business from you someday. You can train me on some stuff. We can grow the business together. And when he brought me on board, it's like, hey, do you want to make some more money? We're going to grow the business. Once we grow the business, that's how we're going to make more money together. And so that's kind of where we started. So that was back in 2016. And so now we basically wrapping up the 7th year in the business now doing this. So that's the short and long answer to that question.
But let's talk about that a little bit. Like the corporate America is challenging, and I've never been able to fit in corporate America. I never understood the politics and the rules. Like, I've never been good at the rules of how you can make more money.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, if you become a this position 0.2, you get a 50-cent raise. And I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. And and I can understand your frustration in the process improvements. And we talked about this the other day. You have a civil engineering background, correct?
Yeah, mechanical. Yeah, yep.
Mechanical. Yep. So, but engineers have a different mind. They're always solving problems.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And so when you moved into like sales off the factory floor, where you can actually solve problems, your brain probably went to, hey, let me solve a problem. And they're like, no, that's not a problem we want to solve.
Yeah. The only problem you need to solve is, can you sell this? The answer should be yes, make it happen. Right. So that was really it. And like, it was, it was something that we'll kind of probably dive into this of all the changes that we've made. But one of the things that I got to experience in my role in my last couple of years doing the sales position was they implemented a new bidding software it's a 100,000 employee company. So it's a large sales force that was there. And there's a huge, the process of changing that in an organization with lots of people, lots of moving parts. So I got to see, the good and the bad of like the implementation of that stuff. But that was one of my tasks is I had to roll that out in corporate America. And so it was kind of good because it's like I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes of how do people that have been doing this much longer than I have at much bigger scales than I have, like what are the things that they're doing well? What are the things that they're not doing well? And kind of how can I kind of take that stuff? Like I'll be honest, like the jobs that I had the people that I worked with, it's the thing is like, it's like any large company. The company itself kind of sucks, but the people that you're typically with closely are all really, really good people. And a lot of it, it's like, I think some of the parallels of what's wrong with bigger businesses is the same problems that we see just from an overall, like how our country is today, where it's like the people at the top are really making the decisions that are not truly caring about the smaller people down at the bottom. And this is something too that like I see, this is something I always hear from everybody in the industry talk about lumber yards. Like that's the best example of it, where it's like, people can talk smack about Home Depot and blah, 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 whatever. But back at one point in time, let's say it was a regional place where it's like they had all these lumber yards in the state. The owner of that guy, the owner that had that, he probably went to all those mills. He went to all those plants. He went to those places. And so when he's saying, what are we going to do this year? Am I going to get an extra X percent? Are we paying the board an extra couple million? Or are we going to do some stuff that's going to make everybody's lives better down at that smaller scale? And you're thinking of those people as people, not as a line on a spreadsheet. Yeah. And it's something that it's nobody's intent. And I'm sure there's all these people that are very smart that are up at those top levels. It's like nobody's intending to do this to people, but it's the unintended consequences of, I feel like there's too many people that, and I didn't get an MBA myself, but it's like the reason we have all these lawsuits today, it's everybody's told to be a lawyer, everybody go get your MBA. And it's like, we've got all these levels of management where it's like, well, I got to show that my management degree is worth something so I can manage stuff. And it's like, well, you're managing stuff, but you're not even really good at it because you don't understand what you're doing at the lower levels of stuff. And so one of my first bosses at the plant that I went through, he was like, hey, everybody that comes through here, the first thing they do is they go out and work on the shop floor. So he's like, you just got out of college, you're an engineer, go out there and see what the guys that are bending sheet metal, like, how do these machines work? What are they doing? Take time, talk to these people, understand, like, this is our process. This is it. And so when you're going to go in and make some design changes on this piece of equipment, that's the guy you're going to need to talk to and be like, hey, man, if I do this, what's this going to change for your operation? And so it was like very early on of understanding, start at the very, very beginning point of when you're about to make a change, what's that going to do? Because the shit flows downhill and there's too many people. Again, it's that corporate America where it's like, oh, well, they'll figure it out down the bottom. That's what we pay it for. Instead of thinking like, how can we do this from the bottom to make it better up to the top then? So that was one thing. Sure. I had lots of good bosses. But my first boss, he said to me, and this was one of those like early on where you're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work out long term for me to be in a plant. And he's like, you know how you get ahead early in your career, it's you work a lot of hours. And I'm like, God, do I not believe that one bit? And I kind of was like, I'll be honest, man. I'm like, I don't think that's like, and this is like, I've known him for 2 weeks. And I'm like, I just don't think that's the right mindset. And I'm like, if I can do what Steve is doing, and it takes Steve 6 hours to do it because he hunt and pecks on the keyboard one little button at a time. And I created an Excel program that then does all this measurement data stuff for me. And I got it done in 15 minutes. It's like, let me peace out of here. I'm going golfing on Friday at 3:00. Like that should be the fair shake. And it's like, no. Congratulations on getting all your work done. Here's some more work for you. And by the way, because you're so effective, we can cut some people out of this thing and we're just going to keep piling more and more crap on you. And it's something that, like, one of the things I truly believe, and I anytime I'm saying stuff like this, is like, I'm not an expert. I've done a little research myself, but like healthcare being tied to employment to me is one of the silliest things. That as soon as we can figure out a way, I'm not proposing solutions to this, but get healthcare untied from employment, because I think there's so many people that are stuck in these positions in corporate America where it's like, and we were kind of at that point too, before my wife quit and came to work with us. It was like, hey, from a cost standpoint, the cost of insurance, if you quit for us to join the business, it's like, man, that's a $20,000 expense for us.
That's
So
right.
it's like, man, it makes a lot of people's decisions on, like, when people talk about like, well, nobody wants to work anymore. It's like, well, do we really have free flows of ability for people to take chances and do something else without losing that? And so it's like everybody just kind of gets in that, like, let's just crank the wheel. We'll keep it spinning. I'm not going to get fired, but I'm never going to go. It's like, I don't even have to go 80%. It's like, we'll go 70% is passing. And then you get the people who are like, well, this is how I've always done it. So one of my favorite stories about corporate America at that time was in my next rotation, a different guy that I was friends with then in Pittsburgh. I was living in Pittsburgh at the headquarters. He was working at the plant, but we were in headquarters. He had to do the tasks that one of the employees in his his finance team was assigned. And she did it like over and over and over this way. Took her, 7 hours a day to do this stuff. And so she goes out for a week. He implements some stuff, puts in some Excel magic, does the thing. It's like, boom, press a button, runs the program 15 minutes every week. He's like, I just took 20 hours a week of what she did and put it into a program for like 15 minutes, but it ends up causing problems because it's like, well, now what are you going to do? It's like, well, this is my job and now you're changing. It's like, there's just too many things of like, well, we just made it better. And then all it does is you get in trouble for trying to make things better and improve them. So I was like, it's like, you know what? We try to fix stuff. Fine. We'll just keep it the way it is. So there's just a lot of that stuff that I just saw where it's like you're limited by the constraints of the system that you're in. And so for me personally, it's like, I just can't. I had lots of opportunities to get to do some stuff, and they gave me a little bit of rope on some things I got to experience. But a lot of it's where it's like, yeah, it's just, that's not how we do it. It's the big business. And so it's kind of the mindset like that I grew up with. My dad was an engineer. My mom was worked in public schools. Both of them, it's like I was fortunate enough that that was the path. Like, you go to college, you get a job, you work for whatever, some start saving for retirement. Like, I can't thank my parents enough for putting me in a position where I've been able to get to this point in the knowledge that we've got. But it was something that until I really met my wife, her whole side of the family, it's all entrepreneurs. And so it's something that it's like, I never was exposed to any idea of going to the trades. And I remember, I think it was Freakonomics. They talk one time about, they're like doing the survey and it's like, raise the high school parents, raise your hands if you think we should have more, whatever, people in the trades, opportunities for kids to learn in the trades. And it's like 80% of the hands go up. And they're like, keep your hand up if you think your kid's going to be the one to do it. It's like 70% of those hands go down. It's like, no. Everybody's kids should be a plumber and electrician, but not my kid. My kid's going to college. And so I think there's just so much stuff in I don't know. I feel like we're living in the world like 20 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, all right, there's lots of stuff going on. And COVID really changed a lot of people's mindsets on stuff. And like me personally, it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, we're literally, I feel like everybody going to the corporate job is a lemming where you're like, just go in and punch the clock. I do this, and I move it over. And it's like, this is just, we got to start, just asking why. And it's like, this is the question of like, okay, we talked about on the podcast, like dig into the why, it's like,
that's right.
What is causing this? What's the effect? Start thinking. And it's that critical thinking that so many people, I feel like now it's like people's brains just shut off. They're like, just tell me what to think. Let me turn on a news program and tell me what I should feel. It's like, you're not getting news from it. You're just getting emotion. They're telling you how to feel, be angry about this. And it's like,
have you ever read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki?
Yep.
Right. Your story kind of reminds me of that, the way you frame this. It's like you have your family that is the, go to work, punch the clock, get your pension, kind of like that's the mentality. And then your wife's family has this entrepreneurial spirit to it. And all of a sudden you get to see these different things. So now you're talking to your father-in-law and he's like, yeah, I could use some help. Right. Like, and you come on board and he's self-employed pen and paper contractor, right? Yes. Like this is only 7 years ago, right?
Yeah. So we start the first year. It's like, all right, you're going to ride with me basically for the first year and just be a sponge. And it's like, well, and it's not that you're going to ride with me. You're going to drive Miss Daisy around basically is what it was. And he's like, oh, this is nice. He can just sit. He can take some phone calls while he's driving. And so it's like, yeah, we're driving around. We go to the customer's house. get the paper copy, the the 3-piece thing. All right, write it out. Let's get up on the roof. Okay, get your tape out. All right, take your paper notebook with all of your estimates in it. Get up on the roof, type, manually. It's like everything that everybody else here has done, or any person that's like, why am I going to spend money on an Eagle view or a satellite report? That's like, it's the same, the mindset that we had. It's the scarcity versus the abundance mindset of like, we're saving ourselves money by doing this. And so it was, the good thing is that I walked a lot of roofs. I saw stuff. I learned how to diagnose leaks, fix leaks. And one of our biggest selling points of our business is like when I go out to talk to people are like, man, he knows his stuff. Like if I have a leak, he can figure out why this is leaking, not just, oh, well, we had the insert big name guy here. He came out and he just said we need a whole new roof. And it's like, yeah, okay, you do need a roof, but I can fix that soil pipe flashing for you for whatever, for a couple $100. If you don't want a roof, here's at least an option. And 9 times out of 10, those customers are like, you know what, I don't want to do the repair. I'm just going to do the roof. But at least you gave me a choice between the two, and you explained and you understand why, versus just a guy that's coming out and telling me the pre-canned spiel of stuff. So when that first year he did $1 million, we did $1 million. I think that the first year that I was with him, and then the second year we split, and he said, okay, go on your own. You're going to start doing all the estimates. I'll start doing all the sales. So things kind of started increasing, but we still kind of stayed at I'm more of the selling guy and he was the everything else. But I was tasked with like, all right, we need a better website, all those little things where I just keep looking for low hanging fruit in the business. Where's the low hanging fruit? Start with that stuff that I could easily do, and it'll make it a good impact, and it's a low cost because we don't have a lot of money to spend. It's something where he's taken a profit hit by hiring me. He doesn't want to go spend another 25 grand on marketing and this and this and this. So we started doing a lot of little things where it was just like, okay, the first thing we did was we got away from sending everybody the voicemail. We started to get them off the voicemail, get an answering service set up. So we've been using Answer Connect. I know there's a couple other folks out there. They've worked well for us. I say the same thing that anybody I've talked to that uses other answering service providers. The quality of the receptionists, they're mostly pretty good. There's always going to be a couple bad ones, but it's something where if you set up a good script, like I didn't know what pre-qualifying leads meant. I just was doing it already, where it's like, well, these are the questions because of my sales training at my corporate America gig, where they basically beat into us, not only the technical stuff, but all of here's how you sell value. Because I was selling 6-figure projects, to people where it's like, okay, prices should be not even really in the discussion. Make sure that they understand what you're giving to them. And so that was like always baked into my sales DNA was I don't sell on price or any of that. I'm always selling on value and explaining consulting, being the consulting salesperson. So, so with that, like we got the answering service set up, just got people to stop calling my phone, sending them to voicemail, having to call them back after hours. It's like, great, at least I had a list. And so that for a long time was my CRM. All right, see who's in the answering service list. It's like, oh, delete them, move them off of their archive. And once I would call them back for a roof, that's the end of it. So it's like, all right, fast forward another couple of years. 2019 was really like the first year we made some bigger, meaningful change. Then we implemented QuickBooks. So literally pen and paper books. It's like, wait until December. Tom's writing the books out. And I'm like, dude, I know you've been doing this for 30 years like this, but we got it. Trust me,
QuickBooks has been around for 30 years at that point.
So getting that implemented, we got that implemented. That is like the intro to starting to see your financials. It's like before it was, and it worked for Tom because of the size that we were at, where he knew it's like, I know the bills I'm paying, I know when it's coming in, and I know where the bank account is. And that was good for a while. But then as we kept growing, it's like, now stuff's starting to get away from us. And I think it was between like 2017 and 2018, our gross profit year over year went down 1%. And we just didn't even know it because it was like, well, shit, we didn't react to pricing changes that we should have, it just wasn't part of our process. So once we got that implemented, we started using an electronic quote tool called Quotient. We're now using Sumo Quote. So we've moved to that this year. But for anybody out there that's still I would say if you're using QuickBooks, stop using QuickBooks quotes. Look at them. They look like junk. Like, oh, look at this. He'd buy $10,000 roof off me. It's got 4 lines of text and a logo. It's like, okay, Quotient. So I started with that because it was cheap. It was $25 a month. it integrated with QuickBooks, and I could get all of my stuff through Zapier into that. So I was like, I'm so sick of handwriting somebody's name and address on every appointment. And I was literally sitting in my truck getting pissed. Like, why do I got to write this on everyone? I got to come up with it. So we got that. I got a mobile printer, printed it in my truck. And so I was printing out quotes and doing it, but it's like, it's implementing a lot of the handwriting. It took that off of my plate. So we used Quotient for now 3 years. And then we just switched to Sumo Quote this year. That was a big undertaking, which back to the change management implementing of software at the like the corporate America stuff, you see it now when we're doing it in our business, especially trying to do this in season. It was something that we've been limited by the amount of people we have that can work in our business. And so it's just been something where it's like, there's a million things to do. You just got to pick something and you'll get to it when you get to it. So Quotient for me, that was a really big thing, getting that where I could just start to get an idea of like, okay, what's my hit rate? What's our hit rate even? It's like, I don't know. I think it's about this, but you don't really know. So I could dive in, pull that data out. It wasn't super, super granular, but it was enough where you could just see, hey, dollars bid, average bids, things like that. But most importantly, it looked good. And the feedback I always got was like, your bid just looks nicer than every other one that I get. And it was something where it's like, I put some pictures of, here's the pictures of the Landmark Pro shingles that you could get. It's just a little bit of that stuff that I kind of had the feeling most people hate the here, let's show up with a folder with 15 pages of literature that we're just going to throw away as soon as you leave. And so let's put it all digital. So we did that, got that going. And then that was really being able to follow up too. I didn't get into any automated follow-ups, but we started having the ability to click a button. I'd have to go into every quote, but I'd click a button and hit follow up and it'd send them the message. And so it's like, all right, weeks are slow. I'm like, let's shake the trees. And so I just literally just sit there, and it's like on a Friday afternoon, I'm like, all right, go home, crack a beer, sit on the patio and just start going through and just banging them out. And it's like, all right, I just sent up 40 follow-ups. Somebody's going to call me. And it's like, sure enough, Monday, it's like, oh, got 2-3 phone calls. And so it's starting to think of those things where it's just like, okay, what else can I do? We just did this. What else can I do next? So when in 2019, we made those switches, that's when our sales, we got over 2 million that year. And that's been kind of like the continued little bit of steady growth where it's like, all right, this is good. We're just keep continually adding little bits and pieces to help grow the top line. We've never been focused on trying to hit top line numbers. It's not something, it's like, okay, we set it as a target, but it's not a, like, if we don't hit 3 point whatever, it's a bad thing. It's like, make sure we're selling stuff profitably, but that's just all into 2022 now that we can even dive into those details. Cause back in 2019, it's like, we're getting better. We're starting to do QuickBooks, but we're getting a P&L where we never had a P&L that was at least somewhat accurate. So it's like, okay, great. We got that. So that year we went from the year before without the electronic bids to the next year. It's like, we were able to bid an extra couple $1,000,000 in work because of it's like, how many hours a day can I save from taking repetitive tasks, right? Yeah, and turn it into selling time. So that was good. And then our kid, our first son was born September 11th of 2019. And that was like pre-COVID. So my wife had 3 months of maternity leave with him, basically from September to December. The one thing I saw is like how tied to the business I was in peak selling season of September and not able to do stuff around the house and help out with that. Cause it's like, she was nervous about me. She's like, well, you're going out. It's like, if you got to get up on a roof or look at something, like, I don't want you to be tired. And it's like, well, I feel bad because I'm not there. And I'm like, this isn't fair to me, to the family. Like, it's not fair to Allie for having to do all this stuff without me when I'm up, working every day. So she was still working at corporate America. Kid was here, and then COVID hits. And so she goes back to work right after maternity leave. And then daycare shuts down. We had him in daycare for like 7 days. It was a week. And we were like, oh, yes, finally. Like, okay, we're getting a little relief. My season's starting to pick up. And then shut down. Everything shuts down. And it's like, oh man, what are we going to do? So I couldn't go out and hand measure jobs. I couldn't bid work. I couldn't go out, here's the tape, whatever. So I started doing manual eagle views. Basically, I'd go on Google Maps, quick square myself, do a pitch multiplier table, because again, scarcity mindset, don't spend the money on eagle views, just save the money, just do this. And it was like one of those days where it was kind of, I'm sure everybody had their own, the fact that most people made it through COVID with their mental health, like still somewhat intact is amazing to me. Cause it's like, I just had one of those days where it's like, what the heck am I doing? Like, what was going on? Like, it's just crazy. And I was like, okay, so like, I forget who it was. Probably my distributor. He said to me, he's like, dude, he's like, what is your hit rate? He's like, just spend the money on the Eagle View, multiply it by, he's like, you're getting 1 out of 3 jobs that you're selling. Like, they add $100 to every bid. And it was one of those where it was like the right person saying something at the right time to be like, duh, just add 100. I'm like, that's like not even $5 a square, like for a lot of these little jobs. Who cares? So we started doing that right at the same time that Job Nimbus was, we brought them on in 2020. And it was like, I was using OneNote before. I was going out using OneNote with a tablet, drawing it on there, having my hotspot, and then Tom could like get the measurements off of it. The fact that we did this together with like, we didn't have an office, we didn't meet together. It was just kind of like, I put the stuff here, you know what to look for, you make the operations happen. And it's like, we made it through that. So then getting into COVID, it's like, well, we're just gonna have to figure out what we do. And so I just switched to starting bidding jobs where I said, hey, here's the price. I just sent my price out. I said, here's a quote, here's a price, here's a follow-up. I turned on Podium. We got him a text message just so it was like, I just sent you my quote. And I was like, call me if this is in what you think it's like in the ballpark. The only things I don't know is if you have a couple layers or what's the condition of the wood. If this looks good, call me. And the feedback I started getting was like, okay, during COVID, when you can't see people, of course, everyone's like, hey, this is great. Afterwards, the year afterwards, we kept doing it when we could still see people. And so many people were like, man, I just wanted a number 2 months ago. You guys sent me a number. I didn't have to sit and talk to somebody for 2 hours just to get an idea of what's the budget. And so that was like learning, which I now understand what a marketing funnel is just from a high level, but like, it's like, oh, okay. So there's a customer out there that really loves this. So how do I keep finding more of this customer? And what do we need to do to make improvements, but still sell to the other customers the same way that we always have? So that was something that it was forced to sell digitally to us basically. And so I wasn't using videos or anything like that. It was just a very simple, here's your quote, here's a number. So in 2020, I wrote we bid $9 million of work in 2020. And this was me, my wife, Allie, and Tom, and I was our only inspector. Well, Tom was running inspections for me for part of the year while I was at home with the kid. I was like, hey, here's a job. They're ready to go with us. Just go out and do the inspection. So we started using company cam. I'm like, go out and take pictures. Here's what we need pictures of. I'd put the company cam pictures into the quote. It's like we actually got on the roof and we could sell without seeing that person. And that was like, okay, we've got something. I'm like, I don't know what we're on to, but let's just keep moving in this direction. So 2020, like we bid full roofs. We were doing full roofs, siding replacement, gutter replacement, and roof repairs. So we sent out 1,400 estimates between roofs and repairs. And so it's like close to 1,000 of that was repairs. And so that was the real big takeaway that we had in 2020 was like, why 2021, there's like, why are we doing repairs anymore? This is taking so much of our time, especially trying to coordinate repairs remotely with all these people. And then at the end of the day, nobody wants to spend even $400. Like, it's like, that's barely making it worth our time. And then we looked at the numbers again. It's like, we didn't make any money on these repairs because we didn't have a guy that was a full-time in-house operations guy that I could just send out hourly. I was using my sub where I was like, hey man, I'm trying to do some repairs, but it was one of those where it's like, some days it's more profitable, some days it's not profitable. And it's like, okay, screw this. We're done with repairs. I just will help the people that are within basically like a 10-minute radius of our house and our office. Other than that, we're not doing them at all. So 2022, I know I'm jumping all around, but like we're only did 350 bids this year versus 1,700 last year. And so we eliminated so much junk, like get just from the qualification process, how do you get rid of all of those people? And so it was making sure that we didn't lose people that said they wanted a repair, but really they needed a roof, or people that it's like, they're on that bubble, or it's just making sure that, they really only needed a repair, give them somebody else. And so what we did was we changed it, and it's like, all right, started asking and I don't know if it was your podcast or somebody else's, but it was one of the like pre-qualifying intake questions where it's like, okay, you called me about a repair. How old is your roof? Do you know the age of your roof? And it's like, it's 20 years old. It's like, no, you don't need a repair. you should probably start thinking about replacement. It's like, that's the conversation to have. And so it's like, yeah, everybody wants to get the discounted repair. It's like, duh, nobody wants to buy a roof. It's the least sexy home improvement project. It's like, roof is, for most people, a water heater and a hot water and furnace are more exciting than a roof is, because at least you can take a warm shower and relax. A roof is like it's the unappreciated home improvement stuff that nobody's like, I don't want this in the first place.
That's
so,
right.
So that's Podium was big, getting that automated text of making sure people didn't get missed, where it's like, hey, I sent you a quote. Just let me make sure you saw my quote, because otherwise it's just wasting money. So it's like, I would literally just send one text. That's it. And it's like, whoop, hit rates go up a little bit. And so it just kept, like, the past few years, it's just been figuring out, what the heck are we doing? Are we doing what we're thinking we're doing? Are we doing it profitably? And then, okay, do we have this kind of under control that we can now try and figure out what the next thing is? So the most recent stuff that we've been doing is getting, we got Sumo Quote started. So that was big for us because we were doing lots of manual Eagle View. We had our own Excel sheet. We like to know it. It's like the nail it before you scale it stuff that you guys talked about. Job Nimbus guy was talking about. Yep. It's like, let's make sure we understand it. And that's both Allie and myself. We like to know the what is making all this tick. All right, and then we'll run it loose. And it also gives us that ability to gut check these new programs we use, because it's like Sumo Quote's got this margin slider, which that is going to be a game changer, because historically it's like, oh, customer's a little more difficult. It's like, I don't know, I had $20 a square or something to it. Now it's like, customer's a little more difficult, zoop, slide it up 10%. It's like, that's actually worth it now. This job is worth it for this difficult guy. We can more easily bid the job to how it should be. It's like the nice jobs, the nice customers, I'll drop the margin on that because I want to land every one of those. The difficult jobs, difficult people, it's like, whoop, slide that up. So getting our big thing lately was getting the automation set up in Job Nimbus so that we're doing more regular follow-ups, weekly follow-ups. Right now, it's like we're literally in that walking before you run phase. It's like, anybody listening that is in that position of like, oh, we're just starting to use Eagle Views, or we're just starting to do this, it's going to take you forever. I was like, oh, we could automate this and get this all up and running in no time. And it's like 3 years later, I'm like, okay, I finally feel like, whew, we're taking a breath, and like we're on the little bit of we're just leveling off of how much work we need to do, instead of like, oh, there just keeps building. But just keep looking for that little stuff where it's like, all right, I just need to make a little improvement that's going to make that biggest impact for it. And it's just chunking one little piece at a time then. So
it is, man, that those small iterations are you may not notice it, right? But when you look back, looking back, Chris, it's like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a notepad in the truck, right? Like, that's what it was. That was the business. The business was a pen and paper.
Yeah. What do you do when somebody calls you about an estimate from 3 years ago and you're like, I got to drive back out there again?
Yeah.
Like, dang it.
It's so like, but those small iterations, it's that analogy. It's like, it's like turning an airplane or a ship, like 1 degree, right? 1 degree that you turn today gets you down the road. You're in a much different place, right? And was this like, I know, like I have a good friend that's a mechanical engineer and does that, works on the machines on factory floors and redesigns them and does this stuff. And he's like that process, right? And is this something that like, that was taught to you, like in those processes? It's like, hey, let's not rebuild the whole machine. Like, let's just see if we could tweak this right here first and make it a little bit better. Is that something that was that part of being that type of engineer? Or
I think some of it was like, I remember my dad when I was little, when I was probably like 5-6 years old, they would have like old computers. This was right when the offices were moving from like the green screens to the other ones. And so it's like, he would bring home old computers that were busted, and it's literally like, take off the cover, and it's like, here, just mess around with it and just like start taking stuff apart. And it's just like, there's always like the books of the cutaways where it's like, show me the inside of this, airplane, and it's all in like every little thing. And it was just always fascinating to me of like understanding why does it work? Just understanding it. And then seeing that like in my, like one of my first jobs where like, hey, so I redesigned a piece of equipment that handles 15,000 volts. So it's the first switch that they turn off when it comes off the power line. into the transformer to step it down from high voltage to lower voltage equipment. And I'm like, I'm a mechanical engineer. I have no idea what I'm doing. They're like, yeah, no, here's the constraints. It needs to fit in this box. Normally we have to pay an engineer on headcount, but since you're on the program, you're on headquarters headcount. So if we waste your entire year just trying to figure out if we can make something work, like, do it. And they said, take all the existing parts, figure out, and this was in AutoCAD, which I had to teach myself basically. It was like, figure out if you can do it. And then it's like, 12 months later, ended up getting a patent, redesigning this piece of equipment. And it was like, just it's having somebody that tells you, like giving somebody the freedom of, this is what I'm paying you for. Yeah, I'm not telling you how to figure something out. It's like, you figure this out. And it's like having that little bit of power, like give that to people in your businesses. Anybody that's like, really look at yourself and it's like, am I the micromanaging type? Am I telling them what to do? Or am I telling them what is my want? What's my end goal? What are we trying to work towards? And that was something that like, I didn't manage a lot of people early in my career. My wife did, but like bringing in other people into the business, it's something of figuring out like, how do you got to let them make mistakes, but it's just give them the freedom. Because when I got the freedom to just, I don't know, figure it out, man, it's like, it's kind of empowering. It's a little scary. And some people it's going to freeze them and they're going to be like, I don't know what to do. Okay, then, hey, that's going to be some people. But some people are like, oh, yes, jackpot. No boss is watching me. I can just do what I want and run. And so it's kind of that, like having a little bit of trust of you're really not going to screw it up too much because there are going to be some checks in the process that will keep you from getting to that point. One book that I really liked was the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Workweek. I read that back in like college because I was like, this sounds ideal. I'm like, I was working at I was doing a co-op for engineering school and like read that book because I'm like, oh man, we're punching the clock here. I liked what I was doing, but it's just an engineer, type of job. And so I read that. And one of the things in it that I really took away was like, start with the worst case scenario. It's like, okay, let's say you want to do something, figure out what is that like, it's like, okay, I'm homeless. I lose everything. Well, you're not going to get to that point because let your brain work from there and just fall all the way back. And it's like, okay, find that disaster scenario. And then what would you have done in order to prevent it from getting there? And it's kind of like, no matter what you change in your process, you're going to start thinking of like, okay, everything I want to do can be done. Don't limit yourself on the mental of, oh, you can't do this for X, Y, and Z. It's like, just eliminate the constraints of it and just think about how do you make it happen. And then you can figure out once you get an idea, it's like, all right, let's put the constraints back on it, see if it still works. If it does, great. If not, we'll just tweak it. So it's like everything is really kind of in life, in business, it's all an equation. It's like solve for X. So it's like, I want more blank. What do you want more of? Money, time, leads, employees. It's like everything's an equation. And so it's like you're just solving for like that was that. It's like, oh, at the end of the day, everything in engineering school, it comes down. It's like it's just a different equation you're solving for.
A math problem.
Yep, exactly. So people are like, why am I learning algebra? What good is that? And it's like, okay, well, when you understand what time and money do, and you're like, oh, well, if you increase the denominator, then whatever the numerator, it's like get more of this, less of this, more of this, and you win. It's like showing people that. So I don't know. That's the thought that I have a lot is like, just how do we get to, what do you want? So like one thing I wanted was I want to have more free time during the week because my time during the workday is spent, I'm slammed. It's like, I left corporate America because I'm like, I'm not working 40 hours a week. I'm going to come work for my father-in-law and we get winters off and it's, it's not too busy. Next thing I know, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I'm working more than I used to work. So I'm like, all right, I have to. And I think this is something that most people, you start doing stuff and you get better at it. And so you like doing it. And it's the people don't ever find something like you do something you're good at. Don't do something you love. When you're good at something, you love doing it. You're going to do more of that because you enjoy doing it. And so it's like work can become that for a lot of us. I think everybody that is somewhat in a business owner role, they can latch onto that. So I said, okay, this year, last year, I was like, I want to start golfing. I enjoy golfing. I started doing that when I moved to South Carolina after college. I'm like, I want to do more of this. Okay, so I want more golf. I need to pay for said golf. I need some sort of thing to make all of that a thing. It's like, what are we going to do? So one of my big things, side things is real estate. We're not big in it, but we just have a little bit of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to join the golf club for 2 reasons. Going to find some more real estate stuff. I don't know what that means. Just that's going in that direction, and I'm going to try and get more roof bids because of it. And so it's like, all right, Tuesdays, I set every Tuesday pretty much this year and last year where I have a group of people I met at the golf club, start going out golfing with them, talking to them about, it's all people where I've found a group of people that are all in the similar boats of the similar own businesses in positions where you can kind of talk and vent of that, like, something else that it's like, oh, you guys get it. But also it's like the people that at some point, it's like people that are in those decisions, when people talk about like, oh, you got to find the key decision makers, the people are going to buy from who they like most of the time, or if they have that decision maker power, they can influence the financial side of it to help you understand where you need to be to get that job. Then sometimes it's like, hey, give me last look on it. I'll just give me that chance. And it's like making those connections. So it's like, because of that, we bid an apartment building this year. So we did just over $3 million in sales last year. We bid an apartment job this year. There's a $3 million apartment complex. Now, do I have any business bidding this? No, it's huge. I'm like, this would be but it's like one of those, I'm like, nobody told me not to. So it's like, we're going to get it, but I got it because of going golfing with the intent of literally every person I go and play golf with at that golf club, they know what I do. I go, it's like where I park my car. It's like the truck is parked so that everybody sees the lettering. So when they pull in and out, and it's something that I hear people now saying like, oh, that's you. Oh, I know your truck. And it's all these people where one guy's like, do you do flat roofing? I'm thinking to myself, no, but I will for you if you need me to. And he's like, well, I got 24 restaurants in the area, Burger Kings and whatnot. And I just need somebody. And I'm like, okay, filed that one. And I'm going to call. I got a guy in the market this winter that it's actually Paramount Building, Eric Reno. If you want another Detroit guy, like,
Eric Reno. I've had Eric on the podcast.
Dude, he is like that. That's the guy. And it's funny. We've got the same accountant that I didn't even know this until I went to him. But it was something where it's like, I look at like, I'm trying to like follow kind of in his footsteps of all the good stuff he's doing. But I'm like, that's an opportunity for me. So I see it's like, hey, how do I get into something that I don't want to turn my business into commercial roofing, coatings, and all this? Let me let Eric run with all that stuff. And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to reach out to him. Let's set something up and figure out a way that I can use my network. I'll use your operations. And we both have good businesses set up where it's you're finding people to work with, like subs we're a subcontractor business in our market. So it's like finding subs, finding good people to work with. A lot of times it's like, hey, if you find good people, the pay part doesn't really matter because you just know you're going to get it done and everything runs smoothly. And so it's like, that's what we've looked to do is any of the stuff that we are selling, that's most of it roofing wise, like our subs for roofing. We've really focused on finding good people for it, and everything at the end of the day comes down to one thing for most people. It's like, hey, are you happy with the quality of what you're getting out of your employees? Are you not getting the right employees? Pay them a little bit more and you'll probably get better of both. And so that was something that's like, when I go to look for other people to partner with or things like that, where it's even just referrals, like that's been huge for us, is giving people, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't do repairs anymore, but I'll refer you to the old Polish guy that used to work for me. Call him. He'll probably come out for $150 and do some whatever for you. But if you need a roof, call me. And it's like, oh, you need this done? Call this guy. We're not doing fascia repair anymore. It's like, call that guy, have him do this stuff. And people are just thankful that it's like, thanks for helping me. So I don't know if that word I got to from that question.
Yeah, be the resource for people though, right? Like be the resource. But one thing that you said in there is you're going to the golf going golfing, you're parking your truck in the parking lot. It is important, man. This is one of the most undervalued things in the business is that wrap on that truck.
Yep.
People don't understand the value in that. It drives me crazy, Chris. Like you're at a golf club, you know what I mean? Like with the truck park, and they're like, "Oh, I've seen the truck a bunch of times. Hey, by the way, do you? Can you help me with?" Right?
Yep.
Like,
and it's like you said kind of about your mastermind group where you want to be for the. It's like I want to be the, whether it's roofing, siding, gutters, like that's what I want to be, the guy. But our big, like when we talk about niches, the niche direction where we're really going, where I want to take my business, full exterior renovations where it's the roof, siding, gutter, all in one. Those are the ideal customers, big tickets. They see the value. I can really sell us because of what we can offer to those homeowners. Yeah. And that's the place I'm going to find people that are in that group of, 50 grand's not a big deal to me versus our historical customers. That was one big thing we had to figure out was who's our current customers, Like, what's the customers you want? What's the customers you have? Are the ones you have really what you want? And like what we found using that using Quotient, I started doing data analysis and seeing it's like our, 70% of our income came from 40% of the projects we ran. So it's like 60% of the whatever. It was some like crazy offset.
Pareto's
Everything
law.
less than 25 squares. It's like, that's not paying the bills. It's all the big stuff is paying the bills. And those are the customers where it's like, I'm never the expensive guy in the market. We're not the cheap guy. We're kind of in the middle. It's like, I'm consistently below the TV advertising guys, but I'm bigger than the chuck in a truck. And it's like nice, sweet spot to be at. So, I don't know where I was going with that one, but
but that's like that. There's a lot of the pieces that you just get the pieces of the puzzle together slowly, right? Now you're going back. You're like, oh, is this where, in the beginning in business, you should take money, right? Like that's, you need cash flow in your business. It's very challenging to say, this is my perfect customer and I'm only working with this customer when you don't have a lot of business, right? Like when you don't have, when you're worried if you're going to get another phone call tomorrow, right?
Or you're gonna lose your sub crew if you don't sell enough work right now, because it's like they're gonna go somewhere else and work for the guy that does have work. And so it's like that was something we talked about, that it was like, man, did that cause me some stress and anxiety this year. It's a double-edged sword of we brought our previous crew. They worked for us like basically as a primary crew for almost a decade. And then the new crew that we got, it's like, I was not ready for the difference in speed of installation between our older guys and the younger guys. And I went from like, I was getting 3 weeks backlog, 4 weeks backlog, to this year. I'm at the point, it's currently November right now. And I'm like, I need to sell 15 more roofs basically, and we can be done for the year. And finally I can take a freaking breath, because it's like, oh man. And it's like, you got to sell stuff, because it's like, hey, do we want every perfect job, or do we not want the bad jobs? It's like, well, it's that, and this is a discussion that we've had between myself and my father-in-law, where it's like every time we ever have a job that we bitch about after the fact, it was always bid when we didn't have any work on the books. And then they called us afterwards when we got loaded up. And then it's like, oh, why did we sell this? And it's like, because we didn't have work when we sold it and we bid it. And so it's crazy.
Like, yeah, that's a good insight. Like that's a good insight, because it's when you need money is when you run into those problems.
Yep. And it's something where it's like, you can't be mad at your past self, because if you look at your past self, you did the right thing at that time, because it's like, I don't have another choice. But a lot of this comes down to when people talk about like understanding where your customers come from. It's like having confidence that I can turn that faucet on to make the phone ring. That changes things a lot. And so the past 12 months, after we did some of that analysis and figured out these are the customers we want by zip code, like that was the big thing. Which zip codes are they in? What's the job sizes? Hey, look at that. Every house that we sold in this zip code was 40 squares and above. It's like, what do we do to get more of those people? And so it's just, we're trying to just keep fine tuning you're separating the stuff that you want and kick out stuff you don't want, so that your limited time could be focused on the biggest, best opportunities for your team.
Yeah. What I'm hearing from a couple of things that you've said along the way is asking good questions, right? So you're asking good questions. You're asking like questions about what is the next most important thing that will, make a big impact, right? That's kind of a question that you've been asking for the last 7 years. And it started with QuickBooks, and then it moved to, now you're in Sumo Quote and Job Nimbus and Company Cam and blah, 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 blah. And you have all these systems, all these technology systems, Eagle View that are making you more efficient on your time. And then now you're at a point where you just keep asking good questions about the business.
Well, and one good thing for me too is that, so it's, when we talk about hiring, I've been very fortunate, because it's something that I've hired my wife and her 2 sisters to join us in the business. So my wife, 10 years of finance and accounting background, totally different perspective, no previous construction experience. Becca, the youngest daughter, she did some recruiting, kind of headhunting type stuff for a little bit, no construction experience. She came on board. Elizabeth, she worked in the mortgage industry, worked for Quicken. It's like nothing to do with construction, but lots of sales experience. And so every person that we've brought in, it's been great, because one, the reality is they're all women. And if you look at our industry, it's like our industry is dominated by a bunch of guys they all look the same. It's a bunch of old white dudes, 6-year-old white guys, because everybody told their kids to go to college. And so there's not a lot of younger people coming in this industry. So we're kind of at that stagnating period where it's like, this is just I need to get to retirement phase, not let's keep trying to make changes. And so it's been cool because Elizabeth came in, she's got a house that needs roof, siding, gutters. And it's like, all right, let's get some bids from some people. One of the things that we've never done in our process, but it's like, we're not a one call close type shop. It's like that stuff. We've modeled our business to be everything like pick your favorite selling experience where you bought something, make that for your customer. And I guarantee you, most of the times, nobody's asking you to sign something. It's like, hey, you need a day to think about it? Cool, man. I'll follow you up with you in a couple of days. No worries. I'll talk to you then. It's like, model your sales process after your best selling experience. And so like one of the things that we love not doing is especially asking female homeowners, is your husband going to be home? Is your boyfriend going to be home for the appointment? It's like, dude, do you want to lose a sale real fast? Talk to a single woman who's the only person on the title on that house and ask her if her boyfriend or husband's going to be there. It's like, you're going to get smacked in the face and you're definitely not going to get the job. And like, I have a couple customers that I can think of. It's like usually one a year, where it's like, I've had a lady in Royal Oak that every time we post something on Facebook, she shares our pictures, she shares everything. And she's the customer that she told me right when I sat down, she goes, you know why you're getting this job? I haven't even seen your price yet, and the job's yours because you're the only person out of 4 companies that didn't ask me if my husband was coming to the appointment. She's like, I've never had a husband, never going to have a husband. So she's like, this is yours because you didn't ask me that stuff. And it's like, huh. And so it's like I'm looking at okay, how have we always done stuff? And then find those customers that get missed in that typical process of like, well, that's not how I buy. That's not what I want to buy. And so I partnered with, her name's Melissa at Social Shoot. She kind of helped us early this year to focus on our message. Like, what is our message? Understand our message. Mm-hmm. What do people say about you in your reviews? It's like doing all those things of like, yeah, we started working on getting better reviews. Now let's see what they say, because just tell the people what they're talking about, what they're praising you for, and sell that to them in the beginning, because that is what you guys do good. Tell them that's what you do good. And then that message kind of connects itself. And so like we went through the process now where it's like, if I have any female buyers, it's something where how I approach my conversations with them is sometimes a little bit differently, but it's something where we understand, like what we tell them is like, we understand that you have a different buying process and you buy a little bit differently. It's like your schedule is busy. You don't have time to sit and talk for 2 hours. It's like, we're going to get in and out. It's not a long inspection. And the great thing is Elizabeth is the one having that phone call with that prospective homeowner. And like, she sets the stage of like, here's what the appointment's not going to be. Here's what it is going to be. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. So it's like, I don't have to wait 90 minutes for this. It's like, you can just give me a number. It's like, hey, I can't meet with you. It's like, great, let me send you a bid. And what we're starting to do now is I'm using Loom. I'll pull my quote up on Sumo Quote, put it on my phone and go through. And I just narrate it to them and say, hey, here's what I saw in your inspection. Here's what we saw when we came out, blah, 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 blah. 6 minutes later, Loom video sent off to them. And it's like, boom, bought. The customer never met me, bought from us, because they're like, you sold to me in the way that meets my buying needs. So it's like, oh, that's everybody else wants to take up my time. I got kids at the house that I got to cook dinner. My husband's working late. It's like our schedules are hectic. Everything's chaos. And it's like, yeah, you're the only guy that actually thought about, how you're presenting this to us. So that's been good. And I just would say too, it's like having women in the business has been so helpful for us, because the way that most guys, probably myself included, it's like we handle responses, especially emotional responses from customers, we can get defensive. And it's like, don't take it personally. They're not bitching about you, the roofer that did this bad. It's like, yeah, your crew messed something up. Just say, sure, we're going to fix it. And it's like having them to be the first phone call that's like, oh, I'm sorry, something was wrong. Let me make sure we take care of this for you. And it's like, that has been really helpful. Just as well as just having 3 non-contractor type people working in the business, just seeing stuff of like, hey, why do we do this? Like, I genuinely don't know why we do this, but I also don't know why we do this. Like, is there a better way for us to do this? And it's been helpful just to have their experiences that they can bring in to share and improve. And I think that's another thing when we look at, like, people are talking about how do you find people. Go on LinkedIn. Like, when I'm ready to find my next person, what I plan to do is I'm going to go try and find the next person that's just like me. It's like, go look for people that it's like, find degrees that are related fields where they want their brain to work. Computer stuff. It's like you find these people. It's like, hey, do you want to work outside? Great. I can tell you're smart. You got a computer degree. You got an engineering degree, etc. Find some people like that, because even if they're selling, they're probably getting compensated less than what you could pay them for too.
That's right.
Which was that was myself in the industry, and it's like I had a $4 million loading, and it's like they were paying me $100,000, and it's like, hey, it's a fair shake, but at the end of the day, it's like you sell $4 million now. It's like you should be getting 10%, 8 to 10%, sometimes on that stuff. So it's like, you dangle that carrot, man. It's like, I don't care what I'm going to sell. It's like, find a guy that's good at selling, and he'll go sell it and explain it. So,
That's right.
So one thing that I know we're trying to work on for next year is like setting up forecasts, setting up marketing campaigns. Like we're coming into winter months here, so now it's and we have got another baby due in 4 weeks. So it's like right around Thanksgiving, another baby's going to be here, and then we're going to be trying. The good thing is I have Beck and Elizabeth that'll be working through the winter, so we can take a little bit of time off finally this year. It's like I'll be I'll be checking in on stuff, but I can kind of hand off some of those responsibilities of, hey, let's keep everything moving, and we step away for a little bit. So it's not our 2-week summer vacation yet, but we're going to be, Allie and I will be taking one next year. But it's kind of all those things. We're getting to that point now where we're starting to see the impact of the efforts that we've put in. And like you said, a little bit over the years, I mean, compounding interest, if people don't understand compounding interest effort, it's all the same. It's like, 3%, year over year growth. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you multiply that 3% effort over 6 years in a row, it's like, shoot, man. Mm-hmm. And that keeps adding on top of the year before. And so it's something that it's like, yeah, it seems like a lot of work. And this is funny because like going through this process and kind of explaining to my father-in-law the why are we doing this? And it's like, this just seems like it's going to take so much time and effort to do all this. He's like, so you mean to tell me like, you're just going to write down everything that everybody's going to do and like everything. And I said, yeah, exactly. You get it. Yeah. I was like, you got it. Yeah. We're going to write down everything that everybody does. We're going to take.
Remember, you used to write everything down anyway. So
yeah. And that's like, it's like, it's just an instruction book. If you have the right people and you put a good instruction book in front of them, you won't have problems. And like, I love selling to people that way too, is like, okay, if you hire any roofer, they should hopefully put this roof on correctly as long as they can read instructions. Every single bundle of shingles that they sell you has the instructions written right there. If they don't install it right, it's kind of on them. And so it's like something where it's like we shouldn't even be bothered about talking quality, because that's a given. You expect that this was installed correct the first time. So let's talk about everything else. But it goes back to, can you follow instructions? There you go. So some more stuff that we did this year implementing from a following instructions is just getting workflows established, using forms and Job Nimbus, starting to get things like that. We used company cam checklists for a while too, like taking pictures like, oh, what do we got here? All those little things of just literally we started having team meetings. Like we didn't have an office until this year. We worked this business for almost 40 years without an office, and we just got into an office. And so it's like having some of those meetings now where it's like, okay, what were the problems last week? What did we run into? What caused it? How do we fix it? And next week, keep that from happening again. And so it's like just diving into new stuff each week.
It is. And I love that the process just continues, right? The process just continues. What do you think the greatest insight is? And I mean, we've kind of gone through a lot in the show, but what do you think the greatest insight is that you could share with our audience that has help move the business forward and find success in the business?
Yeah. So 9 out of 10 problems are communication. Everything in our business, any problem that you want to point to, communication. So everything from the beginning to the end of that customer journey, everything that you do, the jobs that run smoothly, and this is my pitch to our customers, is like, hey man, the jobs that run smoothly, 9 out of 10 jobs that I do run smoothly, but some of them don't. If they don't, all you need to know in the beginning, we're going to take care of you. So we set that stage up front of, hey, we're going to take care of you, but along the way, I'm going to make sure that we communicate with you so that you know when we're coming out for scheduling, you know what shingles are being delivered, all those little things that I'm telling you this. So that's not just customer facing, but it's also internally where, oh, you didn't, I told you this, or I texted you this. Well, didn't catch it. I saw it on an email. And it's like, well, okay, it's not that your communication is bad. It's just your methods of communication and managing it is bad. And so it's like, how do you eliminate communication issues? Because at the end of the day, that's all most of our problems all stem from is that. So
that's it. Awesome. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you would like to generate more revenue through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.